breakers. Maybe it was a battle, something like that. But the first event that you remember going to in this area that was of that sort, starting with Buddha.
I don't remember.
Or one of them, you know, if there's
I'll
something.
tell you, like, the biggest thing back then was that everybody knew of was the Fresh Face. It was called the Civic Center. Everybody came to the Civic Center doing like big concerts. Now, we had things like in Baltimore, the Inner Harbor. You know, certain times that it was battles going on downtown, over the dome, at the dome, and all through the harbor. But this is the whole thing. You just couldn't just bust up and start getting down. You better know somebody, or know somebody that knows somebody, or you'll get ran out. It was pretty different then. You just couldn't get down in certain neighborhoods. You couldn't go in certain neighborhoods. You had to know somebody. But as far as like events,
Yeah.
it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that as far as events and stuff.
And I kind of figured that, but that's why I'm asking. I'm saying, like, as it went through, you know.
Our thing was more house parties.
Okay.
You know, going popping at a party inside somebody's basement and getting down.
But what I want to know is, like, because I know that there's this like fusion of dances, right? And it's like you're breaking, you're doing something, you know, you're very dope at a number of different styles. And yes, so you're doing it at public places and things like that. But then we start getting into like the mid 90s, you know, later 90s especially, and breaking, you know, after having fallen off a lot after its fad in like the mid 80s, early mid 80s. You know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure, you know, that's what it sort of seems like across the board in the whole country. But then you start to have the rise of that underground scene that's doing events. So I'm just curious, like, in that perspective of like an underground scene of just a breaking event, you know, it could be later.
Man, I didn't start doing all that until I got with DVC.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And
I can honestly say that's when I started, me personally started doing it.
For sure. And so, but what event, and you know, would you say was one of the first ones that you went to that was of that sort?
I don't remember.
Okay, Shogun.
So, the birthplace of this whole scene was Raw Material, and that event was put on by 3 Nines, Natural Elements, and ATD, I believe. I think Xeno was ATD at that time. Yeah. But those three, you know, they rented out a park spot in Virginia, I think, and they just called everybody up, and you had big representative from Rock the Con, the whole Goonies crew, the DJs, Disco Rob, Natural Elements. But I want to say who headed that up was Xeno, Vortex from Natural Elements, and I'm not familiar, Prolix, do you know who the, maybe the guy from 3 Nines that kind of...
I know DJ, I don't know who organized it.
Yeah.
I know Xeno did the flyers and some of them were online and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys know what year that was?
It had to be 97, 98,
Okay.
I think. Yeah, somewhere. I'm always like rough.
No, that's cool. That's fine. I just like.
It was definitely about that time.
Cool.
And which was dope because Natural Elements was kind of practicing at the Zone with the Lab Rats, the VA younger heads, and I've never even, you know, we're only in the clubs, and that jam kind of brought that whole younger group and older group together, and then after that, they were like, all right, this is the scene, this is the culture, let's continue, and then it just built right from that jam.
That's dope. And that's cool. I mean, again, I'm learning things because I maybe had heard of that, but it's been a minute, and I definitely was never able to go to that. But Raw Elements, 3 Nines. So that was based in Virginia.
Yes.
Northern Virginia.
Yep.
Toyz. First like event, you know, that you remember going to. It was like strictly breaking event in this area.
The first event I went to was Breaker's Delight. Was the very first jam I went to. That was organized by, I don't know if some of you guys know, they're kind of MIA for the past like several years, but it was organized by a B-girl named Fresh Mama, and her husband, who's a DJ by the name of Daddy-O, DJ Daddy-O. But they organized some really great events and really helped bring the scene together. But yeah, that would be my first experience with Breakers of Light.
Yeah, that was mine as well. Fun factoid. Those turntables right there are from DJ Daddy-O hitting me up to get me my first pair of Technics 1200s, and they're here to rock this jam tonight. You know? So big, big love to them. There's a couple people that I reached out to, and Vortex was one of them as well. He had a really big hand in the Northern Virginia scene, and then Daddy-O and Fresh Mama throwing very big events, in this area that hadn't really been happening before that. And I did reach out to some of them because I wanted to sort of at least get their perspective, maybe get them to talk a little bit. Some of them weren't able, aren't quite as in it. I want to shout them out, and I'm glad that I'm sure it made sense that it was going to come up because they definitely had influences on this area. And yeah, Daddy-O and Fresh Mama with the Breakers the Lights jams. That was my first jam. And on top of that, though, they did a really good job of going to other places. This was before, you could post a Facebook event and invite people from New York and just know that. They would go to all the practice spots and stuff like that in New York to hand out flyers to get people to come down. And so not only did you have a jam that was bringing people locally together, and it was dope for me to see like, oh, they're from Maryland, they're from DC, all these people that I had no idea were breaking. But on top of that, you would get a lot of New York heads, Philly heads, Boston coming down, wreck and shop, and kind of made me be like, damn, like that's crazy. Like it's just another level, and it opened my eyes. And I think a lot of people from our generation, started maybe about 20 years ago and whatever, it opened a lot of our eyes about what was out there in terms of breaking.
Big time. Like they put in a lot of work as far as marketing goes, but they organized some of the. You couldn't really appreciate it at the time, but then like thinking back now. Yeah, some of
People
her
did not
events.
appreciate that.
Some of her events was crazy. Her like at a certain point, I think it was Breakers to like 4. Storm came all the way out. Ivan, Cujo, people all over like Dunock, like when Battle Monkeys was first coming up, came through. Like a whole like people from all over the country actually started hearing about Breakers to Light and how like raw and dope it was. And so then at a certain point, it like. That was like the peak, and then they started doing less jams, just like dealing with life and stuff.
Dealing with life, and then also like there were people that were naysayers, and and like we said, we didn't quite appreciate. I'm sure all of us were just kind of like, oh, Genevieve and Daddy-O, there we go again, like giving a speech about Jesus at a breaking event. Okay, guys.
Yeah,
whatever.
they did do that.
And it was funny. and now looking back to it, it's just kind of funny. But on top of that, there is like real love there. Like those two really made an impact for a lot of us, and really like kind of put the scene in the same building, and not just the scene, like I said, all around too. And it changed a lot of our viewpoints and just inspiration. That we were able to get from them. It changed the way that we were approaching breaking.
It's that ignorance of the generation that was involved at it is kind of the reason why it was as raw as it was too. I mean, it was a bunch of savages, and like you just couldn't like what Buddha said, you couldn't go in certain neighborhoods. Well, like you couldn't go into a circle. It was not inviting. It was, we will get out of the club, I'll smoke you here, I'll smoke you in the corner till you leave, because you're whack. And it was a super humbling experience having to take shit from such little people, because I wanted to pay my dues and earn my rap, but you have these little dudes like coming up, and I'm like, oh my God, it's tough. But at the same time, it's appreciative, but that mind state of a little bit of ignorant lead to some nasty B-boys, man.
There usually some tension, some heat on the dance floor, and that results in what it results in.
The hunger was you didn't know when you were going to get it, the next jam, or who was going to be there. So like you would see guys do an expo battle, they would do a crew battle, then the jam would break up East Coast versus West Coast, and then they would battle in the parking lot before you left sometimes. And then sometimes they got, I don't remember a lot of real bad fights, but that happened too because they were so passionate, and it was only reputation, nothing else. Like, there was nothing. It's just your passion for it, and those cats, they felt it into their bones, man, and it was a dope time.
I also want to add too, when we was coming up, if you were a b-boy, you were also a grandfather, a DJ. What we did was we engulfed the whole culture. Okay, you just didn't do one thing. You wanted to do everything. You know, so that's, to me, I think that's what's missing in our culture today. You know, the elements, having fun with all the elements, and not just one. You couldn't just separate it from, you know, you can't just say, all right, I just want to be a b-boy here, and neglect everything else. That was a no-no. So I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, no, that's dope. And for those of you who don't know, Booda is a dope graph artist, like super dope. And actually, I was walking by it the other day. The piece that's still up behind 25th Street. I still walk by that. I'm like, yeah, that's Booda right there. There's a dope piece. If you're on Howard, I was walking. It's kind of like if you're in a car, it's a little difficult. But like if you're on Howard, just north of 25th Street, the next kind of alley behind the row of shops there, you'll see it. You can't miss it. It's like this giant, brightly colored, super dope piece, and that was done by Booda. So, you know, if you're from the area or if you're here for a little bit and you happen to go up there, it's about 5 streets up from here. You know, right? This is Howard Street. It's like 5 streets up from here, and so it's just kind of cool to see. You know, and I feel like that also goes hand in hand with, like, if you were breaking, you were definitely listening to rap, you know, you're just definitely listening to hip hop, just like that's without question. Yeah, it's natural. And now it's like things changed a little bit. But yeah,
I also want to add this too. We had a crew, right? It was called, before the rock band, it was called AC/DC. All right, we were kids, and the reason why I was AC/DC because back then I used to rhyme. I sucked. I was terrible. I was gone. But my name was MC Ace. And it was Donut Carlos. So AC was for Ace, the D was for Donut, and the C was for Carlos. And that was my first crew.
I think, like, hopefully we can touch on this because this is like the history that inspires me. Like, I felt like I've gave some of the names, and if you ask enough through these circles, you will find out who Natural Elements are, who Lions Designs original members are, who ATD is, you know, whatever. You can find that out. But what you can't find out around here, unless you ask this man here, is who were the crews before, like the Almighty Mickeys and those house and Baltimore club dancers before the ones that you might see or heard of today, like the Four Horsemen, Almighty Mickeys, comes into my generation. But that generation of names before that, only he knows. So maybe you could just like run down the line of like 3 or 4 crews that was like coming up in those days.
Oh man, you had, I can take you back, you had Eastside Jitterbugs, you had Chocolate Boogie, you had Gravity, you had, well, we'll get to that part. You know, you had, before now, when you want to talk about like dancing, like hip hop dancing, it was called High Society. High Society was a group of people, when it broke up, the leader of that crew was Mario. He went to college in '87, and then you had Squeaky, you had Bruce and them, and they started Total Chaos. And then out of Total Chaos, you had like United House that came out of High Society. So Total Chaos came out of High Society. United House came out of High Society, and you had Little Rascals that came out of High Society. You know, so back then, those dances was all motivated by New Jack Swing. Club dancing was motivated by New Jack Swing. Point blank. And b-boy, because those guys were b-boys too. So when hip hop died in Baltimore, Fresky came with the whole, the club music. Everybody went over to club music. You know, you had clubs called like Fantasy. This is before it was called house. It was called club music. So, well, back in the '80s it was called club music, and then it evolved into house music. But a lot of the people would dance at Fantasy and battle. A lot of the battles happened there, which later became Paradise. Because the owner of Fantasy owned Paradise.
Wayne.
Now, it was 87 to 90 was Fantasy. and then from 91 until its prize. So we had memberships at Fantasy, and anybody who had a membership could also get inside prize. Now, Greg Scroggins and Wayne Davis had Fantasy. Greg Scroggins got out of it, and Wayne Davis took on prize. And that's where I heard of, I heard about, now this goes into natural elements.
Yeah.
Because I always heard about Brent. And when I would come down, they'd say, well, you know this guy, he got red hair. These two got to be dead. I'm like, nah, I could never, ever catch him. But they would come down, I guess, on a Saturday night. I would always come down on a Friday night. Now, in Fantasy, it was more of like a hip-hop crowd and club crowd. That's where you get most of the street cats from different areas. Because you had Odell's. A lot of people, Odell's would come over to Fantasy. So it was, but everybody, over there where we were like the weird kids. A lot of the hair, baggy clothes, and all that. Whereas Odell's is more street and thuggish.
And Odell's, for another club, where a lot of people were coming to, is basically where it used to be, is across the street and about 2 blocks down from where we are right now.
So when they shut down Odell's, everybody came over to Fantasy.
Those days. It was rough.
So now you have all of these, you have a mixture of different things going on in one small building, which a lot of battles took place all through the night. Very intense. It was no handshakes. It wasn't none of that. You battle and you get up and shake hands. No, you don't do that. Like, you were like battling for your life, and you might get jumped afterwards. That's just how it was back then. Because, like I said before, they carried that whole mentality over to club, to the house music and club days. That we just hated you.
Wow, it's a very different circumstance, like you're saying.
But that right there, it fueled you to go home and practice. It made you want to work harder. And take this whole thing. We took it serious, like it was our life. So we didn't play around with it. It was no smiles, none of that. It was like, we hate you and your family, and we're going to show it on the floor. You come outside even when it was over, when the club was over, we still was beefing outside. Then if you didn't like it, you would come to your neighborhood. But I'm sorry.
Now I just write a carefully worded Facebook post. No, it's wild, man. Well, and one thing I wanted to touch on, because you mentioned it right there, and I think it's just kind of cool for people to know. So you were talking, about the Baltimore club dances and other dances that were happening here came from New Jack, and you yourself were in some music videos, isn't that right?
That is correct.
Can you tell the fine folks what music videos you were dancing in?
Man, I was in Dee Brown. Some of the other videos was Give Me That by some cats from New York. Oh my God, I don't know why I got a brain fog right now.
It doesn't matter. You said Dude Brown.
Was there a Sybil
About
one?
being stamped.
Sybil, one of her songs? Sybil? She's from here. Well, like 80s.
Sybil, like the singer Sybil?
No, okay. I think it's
Don't make me over.
disregard that. But yeah, how many total would you say that you did? And if you think of some more, I'm just like, it's always fun, like, to hear.
As far as like videos?
Yeah, it's always just fun to hear like which songs or whatever. So if you remember them, you could just like interrupt one of us and say, but like, how many
A lot of
total
videos I was in, you probably wouldn't even know what I can say. I was in a lot of videos.
Yeah.
I would say about 8. I was about 8 videos.
That's what's up.
8 or 9 before. That's before the video that you and I was in, the Lab Tech one.
Oh, Lab Tech one.
Oh yeah, Real Fresh, Lab Tech one.
Super dope. I want to do one last thing, and then we're going to open to questions, because we started a little late, so we're going to go a tiny bit over, but then we also have to kind of prepare this room a bit and, do a jam, I guess. Are we doing a jam today? Thank you. No. Okay. Toyz says no. No jam today, guys. So one thing that I'm always sort of fascinated with and I know that our crew had a part on this, but I know a lot of crews had different parts in it, which is development of what we might consider like a Maryland style, a DMV style, you know, and maybe something like maybe Northern Virginia style, maybe Maryland style, Baltimore, whatever. But like in this area, I'm just curious, like what you would consider, you know, a unique part of the style, unique attributes of the style from here that you don't see in other places. And so, for instance, like in breaking, I have things in my head, but I want to hear what people say. But in breaking, I can think of like certain movements that at least I've heard and that I'm, you know, pretty certain are kind of from here, were developed here by different crews here, and then actually had an influence that sort of spread out. But whether they spread out or not, I'm just curious what you all consider to be just, you know, it could be individual moves, you know, something else, however you want to describe it, but parts of the style from here that make it distinctly different from other places. And that could be within the realm of breaking or house, club, anything. And so I wanted to start with Toyz. Yeah, but
What do I consider to be, or
like,
you're asking
what makes this style unique? What isn't unique? You can tell me it's not, and that's fine. But like, I think that that might not be the case. What makes DMV, Maryland style different from other places?
Nothing. This universe is unique.
Yeah.
But, alright.
Without going into nihilism.
Alright. I think we're considered one single scene like the DMV, but we do have very different styles. Virginia has a very distinct style. You can see it has a lot of influence from Florida, but with Zeno and Create, from both of which are from Florida, and we're like pretty dope to begin with, having moved up to Virginia, and then like that influenced a lot of people. Maryland has its own scene, but it's quite interesting. Like Maryland closer to DC is like different from Baltimore. Baltimore is like its own animal. Like Baltimore has a very, very distinct style compared to anyone else that started, pretty much anyone else in Maryland. Baltimore kind of stands out very uniquely. DC, I think, I really can't say like anything about DC. A lot of the, like all the OGs from like actual like DC natives, like they all kind of are MIA. So I can't really speak on the actual like original DC style.
So, and I guess what I'm looking for is, I'm just curious about specifics. And this could even involve like doing a move on the ground, doing a move, whatever. But like, let's say, so Baltimore leave to these guys, you know, and you can chime in about other things too, but like looking at like, okay, so you have Natural Elements and Lions with Zion and, you know, ATD and 703. Those are like four major crews from, you know, majority from Northern Virginia, but also some in Maryland as well. But from what I sort of, you know, can observe are different styles, and I'm just curious, like, you know, like what's a move that Lions Design does that someone else does? What's a move? What are types of moves or connections of moves that ATD does that other people, maybe not that they don't do, but like it's just like you look at them and you could look at like sort of an outline of a figure and not see the face and be like, oh yeah, they're from like Northern Virginia or something like that. And if it's too much leading, then you know you can feel free to push back. But
Right, check it
I'm
out.
curious.
This is what I'm saying. I think that it's like earlier I was saying, back
I
then,
got something to say too.
it was an individual thing. You know, so speaking from my era, everybody was an individual. And when they put this together, that's what made them different. You know, like I said, nobody wanted to look like anybody else. So, personally, I can't answer that question because I'm coming from a more individual.
I understand that, but I feel like there are trends.
I know
Are there
what
not?
you're-
Like, so for instance, I'm gonna go with club
I know
dancing.
what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to lead it too much. I don't want to just, you know, downplay individual aspect of it, but like, all right, the SpongeBob in Baltimore club dancing, like, that's not being done by other people in others, scenes to that, at least as far as I could tell, or the way that it's done to club music is very specific and has its own flavor to it. So like something else, lines of Zion, like arm threads, things like that. Different moves on the ground that aren't straight footwork that basically got a lot of Lions of Zion members in New York called like sloppy. Sorry if I'm not explaining, but I didn't want to lead with those examples because I was hoping to get them from you and see what you said. But now I'm just gonna put them out there. But like, so people from New York were like, "Yo, those Lions of Zion dudes, like, they're just rolling around on the floor. That's not breaking." They said that about Ghost and a lot of other people, and then later on they came to respect it. And a lot of people, even myself, like I saw Ghost at first, and I'm like, this guy, whatever, and but like you come to really appreciate it. You're like, whoa, wait a minute, like that's an individual style. That's like from here. No one from the entire country was doing stuff like that exactly, and there are a lot of people that got influenced. So now that I've spilled a couple of those beans. Let's hear some.
There's one particular movement
that
I feel like is Maryland. I'm
going. Do it. Here.
All right.
You want to show it? You want to show it? Why don't you show it? Show it. Go show it.
Hold on. Let me crack my knees.
Yeah.
But actually, you and our this is very real, guys. You and I do it a lot.
Yeah.
Which is it's almost like a chest form, but you kind of push up.
Ooh, I know what you're
as
talking about.
as a transition.
Yup.
You go into a lot of other things.
Yup. Let me see it.
It's God.
Come on, old man.
It's like from a leg sweep going like this, and then literally it's that like motion to the side where we lock our ankles, or be on the other side if you're left-handed.
Yeah. So like stomach worm roll kind of thing.
There's no name
side.
for it. There's no name for it. It's just something I did a lot. Fleg did it a lot. Bat does it. My brother did it. Evil Ben does it. LT does it. I feel like that's like a very, at least like in our area, like part of Maryland, close to DC. That was like, it was just this weird thing that we did. I don't know why, but we just do it.
Yeah. And like and just to add in, with like Lions of Zion, I mentioned arm threads, like stuff like
Oh, we do this a lot too, actually. Just
all of that.
we'll go around. you do that a lot. I use that too.
Like arm, knee threads, different threads, and again, someone could correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like stuff that I see from even older cats that really went forward a lot with that style, like Evil Ben, and there's a lot of like just different little threads and transitions and transfer.
A lot of transfers also kind of defined like Maryland in the DC metropolitan area.
But Shogun, what was your 2 cents on that?
So I got to see like distinct three styles coming into the scene. Like I said, Dana and Avery were the guys in Baltimore, and they had like a more loose freestyle approach to their dancing, but very foundational in b-boy. Straight up New York City style footwork and ground power mostly. Then you had Natural Elements, Tiger, FJ, Vortex, who were very traditionally schooled in like the New York style of house. I would say like if you can find footage of like Step Fiends, they had that same feel of Step Fiend flavor with, again, straight up real b-boy style, New York City's East Coast approach to their breaking. Solid footwork, ground power. They had a nice mix between the two, both of those. And then when I saw Lions of Zion, they had a different character and approach. It was way abstract as far as like movement. Now they did have foundational moves, but they were pushing something more towards a battle-oriented style only. That's what it seemed to me. Like every time they carried it in the circle, it was like it's not a friendly circle. It's everything was choreographed to be directed as a blow up or something like that. But it definitely was away from the New York City style approach. It was abstract. They didn't follow certain rules and breaking. They really went different, and that actually